subject to call at 2:55. There's a number of folks to attend the Public Health Committee meeting, and then we're going back on the floor at 4. So I would say listen for the announcement of what time we're going to come back. So we're going to do that. So first, I'm going to call up Senate nomination number 18, Chrissy Noble. Who's Miss Pat? You, huh? Okay. I'll let her. Chrissy, she's a reappointment by Governor Reeves. Chrissy is the director of the Capital Post Conviction Office. And we do have a peer report. That's why I was looking for Pat. But if you want the peer report, we have that. There's no negative information that I saw. I will say that Chrissy, we handle her budget, the budget for that. I will state, I think she does a really good job representing that. And this is for a 4-year term reappointment. So if the committee would like to have her here, I certainly will make that happen. And we can just table it subject to call to get her here. I felt like because it's a reappointment and what she does, and I guess a lot of people probably do know her, that may not be necessary. So I'd be happy to. Okay, so we have a motion to advise and consent. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you. House Bill 748, and this is coming to us from Chairman Hood. We actually had a Senate bill like this. We didn't advance. This actually comes from the Circuit Judges Association. And you can see the language there. It's starting at line 17. The denial of a post-conviction motion filed by the petitioner when it's appealed. And then it goes on more than 3 years after the time for taking an appeal from the judgment. And it says where the conviction and sentence have been affirmed on appeal and has been dismissed where the denial of a previous post-conviction motion filed by the petitioner has been appealed, or where more than 3 years after the time for taking an appeal from the judgment or conviction has elapsed. That's the amending language. What I was informed by them was there's issues in the post-conviction process, and that's what are trying to address with that. So any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the deleted language on line 31?
We're going to have to pull that up.
Okay. He just showed it to me. I'm
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Good. Okay. So we have a motion, title sufficient, do pass. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, that carries. I want to go to House Bill number 1616, baby safety device. This is, let's see, you're going to have before you the bill and then the proposed committee substitute. I know the Attorney General's office is here. If they want to add something after my explanation, be happy to accept that. We all know about the baby box law that we passed, which has been a success. However, there have been a couple instances where there's been some misinterpretation or a different interpretation of the law. And I'm gonna express it like this, that there's been some, if the baby's left in the box, I think the intent when the law was passed was that baby, and it said becomes in the CPS, that has raised the question whether you have to go through the whole proceedings of youth court or whether you don't. It also has led to an issue, in one instance, an issue of where one of the, I guess the parents came back and thus had to go through deal with the youth court process. If you remember, the intent of the law was that we want mothers fathers in the case, but mothers to leave the baby with no fear of penalty. And except what was happening was you get in and they have to go through the youth court process. And so what the language is doing is, if you look at in the strike all, if you look at lines 90, placement of the child terminates any parental rights that the parent had. That's the other issue, is that what was coming up was there were some courts that were saying you didn't have to do TPR. There were other courts saying you actually did have to do TPR when the baby was in CPS custody after being left in a box. And so the intent of these changes are that that TPR, the full TPR process doesn't have to go forward, or it's already accepted. So if you look over at line 122, let's see. That's also giving the a time period within 48 hours. There's some question about whether they had to come before the court. Some people actually thought it could go directly to adoption. You can take them out of the box and go directly to adoption. Well, that wasn't safe either. So I was going to look over. If you look over lines 230 to 233 in the Youth Court Act, there's a procedure by which, if you're an abused child or a delinquent child, you then have disposition alternatives. What was happening was it was being said that the child was a abused child. Well, technically they weren't abused. They were left in the baby box. So what you're seeing there is that there's actually, if the child is surrendered to a baby safety device pursuant to that, then the parental rights are terminated. And the proceedings are to accept it as such. So Senator Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. One is, you mentioned youth court. Wouldn't the TPR have to take place in Chancery Court, or can you get that in youth court?
You can do it in both. It's joint, I think.
Youth court has jurisdiction over termination of parental rights. I'm concerned about this new.
I'm sorry. That was the other thing, was it go into youth court and then somebody had run to Chancery Court and do that. We're trying to make it through that system.
Let me express my concern first, and I'll ask a question. I'm concerned about this new subsection 7. While I think if you placed a child in the baby box, you know, part of the intent of that law when we passed it was to ensure that for those people that did not want the child, we wanted to make sure they didn't do something more drastic and terminate the child in some way, or do something that would be harmful to the child or themselves. But I wonder if you place it in the box shortly after birth, that, you know, I think about a woman who may have postpartum depression or may be going through a psychological period where she could, in a matter of a couple of days, say, what have I done? You know, I wasn't sure I wanted to keep the child. And that has a regret 48, 72 hours, 4 days later, and saying, I love this child. I want to keep the child. But according to this language, if I'm reading it right, once they put it in the baby box, there's no chance for them to ever have that relationship with their child again. Is that correct?
That you're reading it correctly, and it's written that way because, in speaking with the Attorney General's office, that was the intent of the original law. And I'm happy to have someone from the Attorney General's office to explain, but you're reading it right, because what you described, Senator Hobson, is exactly what they told me happened in a case. It happened. They left it. I guess there were some regrets, and then there became a fight over that. And the intent, I think, and I had this discussion with the Attorney General's office when we originally passed the bill, the intent was, if you leave the baby in the baby, you're surrendering your child over to the state in the CPS custody.
I just, again, asking the question, I don't know if you may be able to answer it, if there's not while I acknowledge that there needs to be a short time period, because once CPS takes over, that they are moving in the process of getting the child care, maybe a foster home, adoption. But if there shouldn't be some period of time, 7 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, something for a biological parent to be able to reconnect with the child, and they may have made a hasty, rash decision, and to think that it was, because once it's terminated, there's no coming back at that point. And just, I would like to hear from others. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll just reiterate, you're reading it right as written. And that's why I was going to let, if the Attorney General's office, because that scenario is exactly what this was trying to address. So Gregory, is it you? Would you like to address Senator Hobson's point?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Wiggins and members of the committee. Gregory Austin, Deputy Director of the Attorney General's Office Policy Division. And I have Emily Wow with me as well, who actually practices in this area with the Children's Justice Division. But to respond to your question, Chairman Hobson, yes, I mean, our understanding with the original intent of this law was that once a parent takes that step to drive to a device and put that baby in the device, that they are terminating their parental rights to the child. And there's already an existing code section with the signage requirements that have to be placed by each device. That's already an existing law that says, placement of a baby in this device is the parent is foregoing of all parental responsibilities, which that is a little vague, but I mean, that goes to show the intent of the original law is what we thought, that a placement of a baby in that device, the parent is, relinquishing that child to the state. Another piece of it, which would make it more complicated if, we allowed a parent to return for the child. It's an anonymous process. The mother puts the baby in the device, and it's, that's the purpose of the device, you don't know who delivered the baby there. So as far as, giving a mother, the chance to return to get the child, we've talked about this in our discussions with this bill, there would have to be some type of DNA test done. I think that further complicates it, but I would like Emily to speak on this as well, but she practices in it. But I mean, I think, the original intent of the law was that it, be a termination of parental rights, and we are simply trying to clarify that. This is really a lot of clarifying provisions to make the law more efficient. The devices are working as they should. We have 10 of them in the state. This really just clears up, a couple of, code sections to make the process more streamlined and efficient, because there are different standards being applied when the baby is placed in the device. But Mr. Chairman, I would like to recognize Emily if she could speak on that.
Sure. If you or her, I'd like you or her to answer the question, because the scenario, as it was explained to me, y'all saw that exact scenario where the baby was left and the mother or the parent came back 48 hours after thinking about it, I guess. And so how was that addressed?
Yes. So the situation came to be that he spoke on the identities of the parents not being known, and that's part of the secrecy of the baby drop devices, as we're calling them in the bill. And if the mother was to come forward, then it becomes, in the TPRs, do we turn them over to LEO for abandoning the baby or other grounds? And we didn't want the stigma of abandonment to be on the mother or the father. We wanted them to come and drop the babies off if they, without fear of being prosecuted. That was the intention. I was not on that specific case where that happened, but it did turn into that scenario. And then it became, is that going to happen every time? And I went, before that happened, to Covington County, where they have a baby device, a safe haven baby device there at the emergency room. And I looked at it, I took pictures, and they opened it for me. And when you open the box, a bright, like neon color backpack does fall at their feet. It is designed that way on purpose. Apart from the signage on the outside about the statutes, about what they're giving up when they place the baby in there, this backpack also has that information. It also has other resources for the mother if she or father if they are in trouble. So, you know, if I think there is something in line to also update that if this bill is passed to coordinate.
Senator Hobson? Be good. Senator DeBar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, here, and I wasn't sure if it was anonymous or not, but Mr. Austin cleared that up for me. So I guess, from my perspective, I would think we would want a biological parent raising a child versus put in foster care. So I kind of think there might be some type of 48-hour cooling off period or something necessary. But my question is, so say one parent drops the child off in this box without the consent or knowledge of the other parent. Does that TPR both parents or one parent, or how do we rectify that situation?
That's a question that I've heard some people ask. So if y'all, Gregory, if y'all could answer that. I think the question is, obviously it takes two. So if somebody leaves the baby in there, how are we dealing with the other parent or the father, let's just say?
Right. So there are, as far as devices in place already in the statute that I think if you look in page, I don't know what page yours is, but section 4315-203.
Chairman, I can't hear. Could you speak into the mic, please?
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, I do not have your copy, but that section does have things in place where the agency is to look to see if there are missing children, if the father is out there, if something happened, the mother ran out of spite, maybe with the father, to look and see if there any baby been reported. And to note, the baby can be 45 days old or less. So if we do have a little bit of an older baby, we're not talking maybe a day or two, a month or so. Hopefully they have been reported at that time. And then the agency could work with that father to, in the appropriate way for reunification, if that was the case. But as far as whatever parent, the way that I understand is that once this bill is written, once either parent places the baby in the box, the termination of parental rights or the parental rights will be terminated. And Gregory?
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that too, Chairman DeBar. I mean, so the process that Emily just talked about that's already existing with, for a missing child, that's already an existing law. We weren't, changing those processes, and really with the termination of parental rights, portion of it, that was more to just clarify in the law what we thought is the original intent of the legislature, especially since the signage by every device, indicates that a parent is foregoing all parental responsibilities is what the wording is. So, I mean, it's really just a clarification of that law. As far as, any of the processes that law enforcement already has to follow or to, publish for a missing child, that is not being addressed in this bill, and we weren't, we weren't changing specific provisions of that piece, but.
Well, thank you, Greg. But if you look at the language, it says it terminates any parental rights to that the parent had to the child. So, sometimes, fathers don't know that, the child's been born, or sometimes they're working offshore or in the military. And so might not be ample opportunity to speak up. That's what I'm saying. My area, Greg, where I live.
Sorry.
We have a lot of people that work offshore and just things of that nature. So I'm just concerned that could be a problem And then what will happen is you TPR a parent's rights, you're going to have, you know, someone trying to set that judgment aside later. And I don't think that is good for the child at any point, no matter what age they are. So that was all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
So I've heard, Vice Chairman McCon has a motion for a reverse repealer, which I think would be appropriate to get at these. So is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Okay, so we have a motion for reverse repeal. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, Senator Simmons?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, while when we add a reverse repealer, we usually allow the bill to go based upon the concerns raised by Chairman Hobson and Chairman DeBar, and because I've actually personally have represented someone who was suffering from a mental disease or defect or a drug addiction, who did something without the knowledge of the father. I just think our existing laws regarding TPR, it provides notice, it provides due process, it provides a deliberate process judicially that we go through notifying the parents, both parents, before this fatal decision is made as it relates to the rights of the parents. Because I agree with Senator Hobson, once that decision is made, I mean, it's over. And so because of that, my amendment, Mr. Chairman, even though we have the reverse repeal in it, is to delete any language that will place in the statute that those rights are terminated upon the dropping of the baby. So that's what, I mean, of course, if at the appropriate time, if we need to.
So let me understand your amendment. If I understand your amendment, that's basically gutting what the Attorney General's bill doing, because you're saying, because that's the whole point of the bill.
As I understand it, Mr. Chairman, the new language says at the point that you drop the baby, the rights are terminated. And when we originally considered the law, there was a process in place, and TPR didn't change. Under our current law, the process that we go through, not just with dropping a baby, but to terminate parental rights, that still exists in law. And nothing will change that process judicially. But that's it. That's all I want to do. But if this deliberate body decides to add it on the floor or through conference, that's fine. But I mean, I personally have represented a mother who believed, because she loved the child, Mr. Chairman, at that time thought it was in the best interest for the child that she loved, but then reconsidered and said, I want my baby. And the father didn't know any of this. I represented the mother. And so that's my amendment.
Well, okay. Your amendment is to strike that
Subsection 7.
subsection 7.
Yes, sir.
We have a reverse repealer in it. Is your, Senator Hobson, your question on on the amendment?
Well, I was hoping to be recognized before the amendment, but if not, I would address it. If you've recognized him for the amendment, then I do have a question on that proposed.
I'll go ahead and recognize you.
Well, I think what's probably happening here is what the Attorney General is proposing is to have some finite number cut off where the parent can't come back 6 months from now or a year from now and say, wait a minute, I want to get back, you know, I've given the child up, but also recognize, and what I think the questions we're all asking is, if you do it 2 days after, 3 days after you've given birth to this child, you might not be in your right frame of mind to really make the conscious decision to whether or not you want to give up this child. And so I'm trying to see if there's a solution here where maybe there's a day, a 3-week, 1 month period or something where if the parent has not taken affirmative action to come back to claim the child, that they could, then at that point, it's final. I'm looking for, because I don't think what's being proposed right now in this bill is the right thing for them to make that decision that quickly with no notice, no due process, no issue. So Senator Simmons, I guess what I'm asking, is there a way that we could come up with some language that doesn't just eliminate the section so that CPS and others can move forward and the Attorney General move forward with it, but not be so quick and so abrupt? And I don't know if you'd be willing to entertain. I don't know what the right number is, but I don't know if you'd be willing to entertain a a substitute motion to say 3 weeks or a month. I don't know what the right number is, but I would start with 30 days, but I'm willing for somebody to make a better motion. There may be some flaw with that, Mr. Chairman.
Hear about it. So I take that, huh? So I was gonna say, I take that as a substitute amendment. I take that as a substitute amendment. And, so Senator Hobson, can you, repeat the amendment?
My amendment would be 30 days if they haven't come back to take affirmative action to claim the child. And obviously they'd have to provide proof. I know the question, if they dropped it off anonymously, they're either going to have a DNA test or hospital records that would indicate, correlate the birth of the child to this parent, probably a DNA test. But if they provide the proof and they come forth within 30 days that if they don't do that, then their rights would be terminated.
See Ethan over here. He's
I'm-
right now.
I'm just trying to work through this with the committee, Mr. Chairman, so I don't have a
The
perfect
amendment is
answer.
Referencing in section, line 90. And so I would say if the amendment passes, if maybe work with the language with Ethan to do that. Okay, is it question on the substitute amendment? Okay, Senator Fillingane.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, back to the concern raised by Senator DeBar. Is the amendment talking about the parent who dropped the child off only, or is the amendment applied to both parents? Whether or not the second parent even knew the child was born or dropped off?
Senator Hobson.
Well, I think that if the parent didn't know, if there's been no, if you had a parent that went to the hospital, a single mother, and there's been no indication or no knowledge that the father knew of that, then I don't feel like their parental rights should be terminated automatically. However, if the father has acknowledged the birth, and I don't know, somebody's got to help me with this, but if the father's acknowledged the birth through the hospital or other records, that his rights would be terminated too.
Well, I certainly understand the amendment as it relates to the parent dropping the child off. I'm just curious, and maybe CPS or somebody else would have to answer what efforts, if any, they take to try to identify who the father of the child is, and if he or his family would be interested in adopting the child or taking control or custody of the child as opposed to going to the foster system. That's my only concern.
AG's office, can y'all answer that question in terms of what's going on with the father when a baby's left in the box?
To my knowledge, like I said, I haven't personally been on that case. I practice from the standard TPRs, but I think it's been the way it's been operating that both parents have abandoned the baby. And that was our point of updating this bill to take the stigma of abandonment
How
off.
do you know that both parents have abandoned the baby? What efforts have you taken or has the agency taken to identify the other parent and to find out if he also is abandoning the baby or is even aware of that process?
Then it goes back to the statute where where it was put in place where the agency would check to see if there was a missing child. Was there any family member who even was searching for a child? Was a child abducted, kidnapped? All of these different provisions, I think that that would fall into that to search and that possibly come up as a search. I can't answer to that definitively in a specific case, but I think those provisions at the moment would be what's in place to search for that.
So you're putting the onus on the father to come forward to you all and say, hey, I think a baby has been born, and do y'all have it? Have you heard about it? Where may you have placed the child? And by the way, I may be interested in raising this child myself. I mean, what are we doing in that space?
Right. If a father does come forward, that's what those measures are in place. The baby can be put in the box up to 45 days old. So if it's after that, then to my knowledge, it would go, if the baby were surrendered, then it would kind of default to our normal Youth Court Act and TPR statutes if it did go as far as TPR. Do you have anything else, Gregory?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I withdraw my motion. My motion, I think there are a lot of questions on this. I know you've got another agenda and I think you were going to break at 2:55. My motion would be to lay this on the table, subject to call of the chair.
Okay, that's the motion. I will say that we are gonna, as I stated, gonna recess at 2:55 and we are gonna come back. I think, look, if something can be done, but that is the motion. So, all in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, that'll be, laid on the table. I think we can do, I want to call up House Bill 1760 opioid settlement fund, Senator Boyd. I will state that, this is, we passed our code section bill, dealing with the opioid settlement funds. The strike all before you, Senator Boyd has been working on that, and I'm going to let her explain that. But in short, it's to put some more, accountability into the funds and the, process. Senator Boyd?
We have the strike all that you have before you. Basically what it does is it, makes sure that there's no, conflicts of interest. We put some provisions in there in regard to that. We've clarified, how the funds can be allocated out by the legislature. We've used the Gulf Coast, what's it called? The ration funds as a model as to how we would do that. We did those procedures in there. And that's basically an outline of what we've done just to clean up some of the process that we've had a little bit of complaints about, and we saw that did not work effectively with that. So that's an explanation of the bill. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, any questions? Do you have a motion to adopt the strike all?
Motion to adopt the strike all.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Do I have another motion?
Rise and report.
Title sufficient do pass. We put that cart before the horse, so title sufficient do pass. So all in favor of title sufficient do pass, say aye. All opposed? Okay, and the motion, we're not going to do the rise report. We're going to recess, subject to call. We're going to recess the committee subject to call. We'll announce it on the floor when we go back.